Tonight on Studio 12, take a 2-mile walk through a public art park and meet the local and international artists who helped it come to life.
Then, how global supply chains impact more than just what's on store shelves. We learn how these networks shape communities and jobs.
Plus, the remarkable legacy of Margaret Molly Brown, as told by her family and the museum that keeps her story alive.
And we close the show with a live performance from the Gasoline Lollipops at the FOCO Music Festival.
All of that and more right now on Studio 12.
From the Five Points Media Center in the heart of Denver, Colorado, this is Studio 12.
Hello, I'm Ryan Harrer.
And I'm Bazi Kanani. Welcome to Studio 12.
Colorado's Front Range is home to a growing collection of public art.
And at Hogan Park in the Aurora Highlands, a new art park is bringing local and international artists together to create something truly unique.
In our Heart of the West segment, we spoke with two of the artists, one from right here in Colorado and another all the way from Berlin, as they put the finishing touches on their collaborative installations. Take a look.
My artist's name is Snyder. I am a mural artist from Berlin, Germany, and I'm out here to paint for the Aurora Highlands.
My name is Kendall Kipley. All of my work is based on glaciers, ice, snow, and like the movement of water. And that's the imagery that I use to source my designs, but I also think, like conceptually, think that the idea of water and change in environment and how water changes a landscape and shapes it is a mirror to our inner world. And so a lot of my work includes like poetic statements, like in the other one it says, "Don't let me go." And in the tunnel we're standing in, it reads, "Fühlst du mich?" which is in German, "Can you feel me?" which is a phrase that is about the unmeasured energy that you feel when you experience an art installation or something that moves you.
The first time I got approached was actually by Carla, who is the curator of all this. And she bought a print of mine. A couple of years later, Olivia Steele reached out to me. She knows my work from Berlin because she also has a studio there. And we always wanted to collaborate on a project. When she came here to install her art, it was clear that we could do that collaboration here in one of those tunnels. So the story of this tunnel is that Olivia came up with a phrase which is a quote by Robert Frost: "The only way out is through." And this became the theme of our project, reminding us that perseverance is key when you go through the challenges of life. We decided to make the message even stronger by painting all of the tunnel so that it becomes more or less an immersive experience. I love painting outside because I get direct response from people passing by. Whereas in the studio, you're all by yourself alone for hours and hours, and painting outside is much more fun to me. So the phrase says, "The only way out is through." And the other day, a man who lived here in this community passed by, a local, and said to me that whenever he does his work out here and he's running through the tunnel, this helps him keep going. So that's one of the things, one of the small interactions I like about this painting outside, that you really get to know what people think of your art.
It's the first time I've painted an enclosed outdoor tunnel space, so fighting the elements of wind and cold and heat, and then you're also in the public, so you have interruption, but that also is the best part of it because you get to see how the art is affecting people as you're installing it.
There were a lot of challenges doing this project. The weather, of course, it was very hot in between. I have to wear a full face mask all the time when painting. And the wind. The wind is probably the worst because it's channeled in the tunnel and you have much more wind in here, which is obviously bad for spraying.
This particular project is unique because I'm collaborating with another artist, Snyder, who lives in Berlin. So we didn't have a whole lot of time together in planning to prepare, but Carla saw that both of our styles really complemented each other and wanted the local presence of artists here in Denver and Aurora and, you know, the surrounding areas here in Colorado, but also international representation. And I think she really saw it as an opportunity to bring not only this community together, but different artists from around the world.
The cool thing about traveling and painting is, for me, actually meeting people, meeting new people. And we're like, the street art community is a community. I can go wherever I want in the world. I will always find people who are like-minded, and I'm always able to connect wherever I go through my art. I think what's special for my art is that I'm using this optical effect called chromatic aberration. That's where my colors come from. And then I have these fluid shapes, and I'm using these colors for everything I paint, whether it's abstract, like most of the parts in this tunnel, or animals or portraits. And that's some kind of my distinguishable style.
There's so many moments in life where you're sharing an experience with someone and you can just feel that they feel the same way. And it might be slightly different, but that's what makes us human and connects us. So this piece particularly is, especially being here in the Aurora Highlands, is about how do we feel about bringing this type of art park and this gallery, this international gallery, to a space that's accessible, public, and open daily to anyone who wants to visit. And you know, instead of telling people how to feel, it's more like, what does this make you feel?
Also the fact that people get to see your art without having to buy a ticket for a museum or for a gallery. You know, they just walk the street and suddenly they, boom, see something that they didn't expect. And that's the power of street art, I think. There are more and more mural artists out there, and public art is something that's being more and more valued. And that's something I really like about it. And people start to understand what it can do for a community, whereas before they just didn't know. Ich glaube, wenn man sowas machen will unbedingt, also als Mural Artist Vollzeit arbeiten, sollte man keine Angst davor haben, sondern einfach machen. Und vor allem seinem Herzen folgen. Man sollte immer das tun, was man wirklich liebt, weil so hat man immer genug Energie, um die ganzen Höhen und Tiefen durchzustehen. So the more street art, the more murals we have, the more life there is, I think, in cities. And that's even the case when it's just illegal graffiti. It shows there's some life going on there. So graffiti for me is the mother of it all. And if you look at this here, which is a curated art park, it has nothing to do with graffiti, but the good thing is you get to speak to a broader audience of people when you do street art and murals as when you do graffiti, where it's just about your ego, basically.
The size of this park is impressive, and there's no other place that I know of, really anywhere, but especially in Colorado, that has such a diverse and unique amount and variant of different art pieces from all around the world, but also from local artists. And it's truly something to witness, like the larger-than-life sculptures, like the tucked-away signage, and just from like small details to large installations, everything is really intentionally curated and thought through. And there's 20 that I know of, and at least 30 more on the way.
I love the interactive nature of much of the art there. That Umi sculpture, the way you can just walk right beneath it.
There are a couple of really tall structures there now, sculptures, and it's beautiful on camera, but what's really impressive is standing below it and looking up. You have to go.
I can't wait to see it.
It's impressive in person. The Aurora Highlands 2-mile art park will continue to grow, adding more art structures, color, and creativity to the community, so be on the lookout for that.
And also good to know, it's free to explore, so you may want to bring a friend or two or three to take a walk through this one-of-a-kind art experience.
To plan your visit or learn more about the artists involved, head to aurorahighlands.com. When you think of supply chain, you might think of large shipping containers, empty store shelves, or even the pandemic.
That was certainly a time when we all found ourselves suddenly thinking about supply chain disruptions. University of Denver professor Jack Buffington explains supply chains aren't just about what's available at stores. More than that, they shape our communities, our jobs, and our future.
In this edition of The Business of Colorado, PBS 12's Franny Matthews talks to Jack Buffington, a supply chain expert, to break down how global disruptions, workforce shifts, and infrastructure decisions are reshaping our world.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Franny.
Tell me about when you got interested in this and some of your early observations.
It was probably at birth. I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, and it was probably a field I would not want to go into because at the time I grew up in the 70s, lived in the city, and I saw all my family members losing their industry jobs to what was happening in the global supply chain. I was very curious what was happening, and I felt like there was something I had to be a part of, understanding how supply chains change and the journey that my city went through and how I can make a difference in changing that. I think it's really important to understand how things have changed over human history. So for most of human history, I would say 99.999% of human history, there was never enough of things. There was never enough supply. And so there was a lot of poverty, like most people lived in poverty. And then probably about the middle of the 19th century, fossil fuels came about, which changed everything because this is enormous power to be able to allow supply to meet demand. So things didn't really take shape until about World War II because of wars and pandemics and depressions. But then that's really when supply chain came about during World War II. It was a wartime activity, it turned into a peacetime activity, and now for the first time in human history, it was possible that supply would be able to meet demand. And so probably over the next 80, 90 years, that happened across the planet, and most notably in China, 800 million people pulled out of poverty in about 20 years. But that reached its peak around the 2008 recession through the pandemic. And so now we actually have an opposite situation that we had for most of human history. As opposed to not having enough supply, we have more supply than demand. And so you're seeing the turbulence in the global supply chain when it comes to trade wars and everything like that. More countries wanting to make, to balance out their supply chain.
Let's step back a little bit and get your definition of what supply chain is and global supply chain is.
Yeah, that's a great question because what I just talked to you about is how there wasn't enough supply all the way through today where there's more supply than there is demand. Now the one challenge with that is that it's optimized globally, which means that we live in a situation right now where there's people who make your clothes who live in one place and they're focused on the supply. And there's parts of the world that are focusing more on the consumption. The goal we need to move towards when it comes to supply chain is a balance between supply and demand locally, because that's what enables what happened in the United States after World War II, is we had this thing called the multiplier effect. So consumption would lead to production, and that would lead to higher wages and more prosperity, versus what you're seeing today is there's parts where people are making things and there's parts where people are consuming things, and it's out of balance. Right now, what's happened since then, since the 70s and 80s, is a lot of wage growth in white-collar fields, a lot of people going to college, but industry has fallen. And so this is a challenge beyond even just the cities, and I think you're starting to see a lot of conversations, is our country needs more of a balance between industry and services in order to support people in some of those trade fields that we need for prosperity, but also we need for resiliency as a nation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's really important.
You know, you have talked about, you gave a really good landscape of what we're dealing with now. Are there any other big misconceptions that you see in how we look at supply chain?
Well, I think there's been so long, if we talk about talking about the United States, that what's happened is fields have been surrounding supply chain that have focused on consumption. You know, you think about what I talked about when there were enough of things. You didn't need marketing. right? Because people always wanted to buy whatever was available. And now we have marketing, which is driving consumption, and we're really out of balance. And I think even beyond the industry side, there's a little bit of a loss of who we are and who we want to be as people, when the focus on we just need to consume more. And if you look at what happened with COVID, it was, let's get the economy going again just by more consumption. We're going to encourage more consumption. And I think, one good news I think that's happening now is people are seeing it needs to be more balanced, and we need to focus more on industry. Now, the challenge with that, Franny, I would tell you, is that a lot of the new areas in supply chain and manufacturing are digitized. And the challenge we have with people who are on the other side of the digital divide will not be a part of that. So there's a lot there. We really are in a unique time of history where we pretty much are at the fork of the road when it comes to the importance of supply chain, which is exciting to a person like me because this is my field. What people don't understand about supply chain is it's a process field. It's not a content field. The problem with content in our world today, it changes too fast. And so what we try to teach our students, and what I did in industry, is we're problem solvers. We don't try to teach people what to think, we teach them how to solve problems, which is what we love about the field. And so a lot of these challenges that people see in the industry, we just kind of get used to it. And so from the supply side, and your toothpaste and your mask and your clothing and stuff like that, I think that's an easier solvable problem. I think we've lost some of our focus on best practices, and it has to do with globalization, and that if we have long-tailed supply chains, which means that the blouse you're wearing, it was made in Bangladesh, we're really focusing on lower costs, and we're not focusing more on quality and good practices. And this is great. It all works out well until it doesn't, right? And so there's things we can recover from, like natural disasters and things like that. But big events like the pandemic, and I would also argue the trade war, the tariffs and all that, leads to a different challenge that we face. And so what I work with companies on is going back to the principles that made us successful, focusing on quality, focusing on efficiency, these great practices that allowed the United States to really lead to success in World War II that was carried over into the 50s and the 60s is what we need to restore.
How do you take what you just said and apply it to what we're dealing with right now?
It's not without precedent. When we became industrialized, we had to train people who were farmers, and we had to train immigrants from other countries, basics in order to be able to work in industry, reading and writing and things like that. So we had to completely transform our educational system. And we're at that stage again today, right, where we have to focus on digitization, understanding technology, and frankly, we have like what I talked about, we have this digital divide right now. Our education system needs to change in order to support that.
I'd love to hear your point of view on AI kind of chomping at the heels, and can be a great addition, but it also can be a threat.
The problem with AI is that, again, we talk about foundational skills, understanding how to interpret, manage, harness data. And the problem with AI is it's a shortcut from that. I tell my students that they're going to win by being critical thinkers, because the jobs I did in industry, I think there's some areas where just raw harnessing information, it could help, but it can't help you solve these problems that are complex beyond like an algorithm. There's nothing more important than curiosity.
Yeah.
I tell people in my job as a leader, my job is to ask questions, not to have answers.
Yeah.
And so I would walk around our facilities and I would just observe, and I would ask questions, and I would just ask my team questions. And people think the leader's job is to tell people what to do. It's not, it's to ask questions. And so that's my fear, is if we lose that sense of curiosity, then it really is problematic.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the things that we do from a process perspective, we've always done it one way and we don't go back and question it. And that's why I like talking about supply chain, because I think there's constantly questioning on this.
Right, and these principles of like Six Sigma, quality, it came from our field.
Let's pivot a little bit to some specifics, because one of the specifics that I find very interesting is supply chain in semiconductors. 90% of the highly advanced and with nanotechnology are made in Taiwan. That seems like a bit of a pinch point to me. How do you look at the semiconductor industry and where we are, what our risks are, and what we can do to critically think our way out of this?
Yeah, it's, just to expand a little bit about the different types of semiconductors, I would categorize it in 3 categories. There's the commodity chips, they're in toys and things like that. They're made in China. They're probably going to be moved to Vietnam, places like that. Then there's the middle road ones that are a little bit more advanced. They're still within the industry, and I think those are the ones you're talking about are primarily made by TMSC, which is based in Taiwan. What they're trying to do as a company is try to divest a little bit in order to resiliency in case anything happens with China. So there's a lot of investment here in the United States when it comes to that space. In Arizona, there's massive infrastructure happening regarding semiconductors. But then there's the most advanced ones that require like a whole bunch of nations are involved in this. There's the lithography, there's like different components. And it's not just one country that can support that model. And so right now is primarily a Western model for those most advanced chips. And that's where I think China's pushing back and they want to be a part of this. And then you have companies that are saying, well, we'll sell some of these chips to China, but not all of them. So it's that most advanced chip, which is the big battleground. It's not really the other two.
Let's talk about Colorado. Where do you see us right now?
I'm really excited about it. And it has to do with, so being someone in industry, Colorado has always been like a point between Chicago and California or Texas. Didn't have a lot of industry, but the airport has really changed a lot of that. So if you head out east, all that area is turning into industry. And I think it's a fantastic opportunity, and especially perfect timing with, people in the United States are like, we need to focus more on industry. And the West is really going to lead the way. You heard me talk about Arizona when it comes to this, and Nevada when it comes to rare earths. In Colorado, I think the airport is, number one, it's the 2nd largest footprint airport in the world. It's like one of the 6th largest when it comes to passenger traffic. And so now there's all this opportunity for companies to build here and to put factories here and to put logistics centers here. And I mentioned we have this initiative out there. And what I want us to bring as a university is best practices on how we do that. And so I think there's this fantastic opportunity. And I look at like cities in the past, like Fort Worth, Dallas, went through this era where they built in between and it became this really great industrial place. Like Colorado is going to be the future of that. I think Colorado and Arizona are probably 2 of the states that I think have the most potential. And so running a supply chain program and having these opportunities, I'm really excited about it.
That's cool. That's very cool. What are some of the obstacles that we need to overcome?
Workforce, of course. Yeah. Some of the challenges with growth in housing, cost of living, things like that. I think beyond that, I think like having conversations with local governments, and there's a lot of optimism and enthusiasm. So I think a lot of the impediments can be fixed. China's got the best infrastructure in the world, and it's not comfortable to say that, being an American, going there and seeing it, but it's obvious. And that's going to be really important for the future of supply chain, is if we want to bring all this manufacturing here, we have to have the right infrastructure. I mean, if you go to China and see the high-speed rail and the ports and everything like that, obviously we're not going to do things like them because we have a different form of government. But, the focus on problem solving and value is, if you're doing a project and you look at some of the tasks that are involved in this project, there's a lot of non-value add. And so what we do in Six Sigma and structured problem solving is we do a value stream map and we try to vet out all the non-value add. And whenever you look at one of these projects, like I was mentioning that semiconductor project in Arizona, it's already behind schedule. And so there's a lot of inefficiency, and we got to take this seriously. So I think it's a paradigm shift of, like, if we're serious about this, because now we're saying we are, then we have to change how we look at these projects, because we won't be able to compete without them. So we try to view ourselves as empirical and data-driven and focusing on value. Not to take a shot, well, I guess I am already, on the political side of things is that like the politics and that look at things differently than we do. So if, like these projects could be done a lot more efficiently. I mean, I know there's zoning provisions and there's studies that you have to do and all that kind of stuff, but you know, like a good example is the whole rare earths thing. You know, like we now realize that as we did this trade war with China, they basically threw down the card and said, rare earths, you don't get any. We're going to shut down your automotive. We're going to shut down your defense industry. And we fought a war that we couldn't win. And so we kind of walked away from these projects because they were too difficult, they were too timely, they took too much time. My point is, if we change the paradigm of how we do these projects, then there's going to be a lot more that we bring back to the United States.
What would you like people to take away from this conversation?
I would say what I learned from my life going through this piece and why I got attracted to working in supply chain and manufacturing is the whole problem-solving aspect of it. And what I love about extending supply chain beyond what people consider to be supply chain, which is manufacturing and logistics and things like that, into fields like healthcare and government and sustainability, is using that same method for problem solving to solve big problems that we have in this country. We need to get back to these principles of doing things rationally, stop reacting to problems and solving things in the way that we used to. And I read all these, students are like, what book should I read? I'll have them read a book from like Deming from like the 1970s instead of like a pop book, because it's the principles. Yeah. It's the statistical process control. It's not complicated. Anyone can do this if you're willing to spend the time and effort on it, but there's not an easy answer to it. So I say this to my students, I say this to professionals, is like, roll up your sleeves and learn it, and you're going to be amazed in how these problems that seemed insurmountable become solvable.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time this morning. I'm hoping we'll be able to have some follow-on conversations. This was really enlightening, and I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I enjoyed it.
Thanks again to Jack for his insight, and stay tuned for more conversations around business right here on Studio 12 as we continue with our series, The Business of Colorado. Next Thursday, the state capitol will be buzzing again as lawmakers return for a special session. The governor is mandating they come back to work to deal with the budget.
And there's a lot of finger pointing as to how our state got into this tight fiscal situation. Let's join the conversation from Colorado Inside Out with Kyle Dyer.
Hi there, Bozzy and Ryan. So as all Colorado kids are headed back into back-to-school mode, our Colorado legislators are having to gear up to return to the state capitol next week for a special session. We have talked about the $1 billion in cuts that they have to make to our state budget. But there is also the need to revisit a bill that was passed last year regarding artificial intelligence. Our legislative insider is here this week to fill us in on what awaits state lawmakers and really all departments within state government, with money being a big issue right now. Firefighting takes a lot of money. And money is a big concern in our state right now. Marianne, you were the first to report this week that the governor is calling the legislature back August 21st for a special session. And you also reported the same day that the following week we're going to be under a hiring freeze in Colorado.
That's correct. The governor announced on Wednesday that he is implementing a hiring freeze that starts on the 27th and continues through the end of the calendar year. Now, there are some carve-outs. Firefighters, for example, are one. Anyone involved in public safety, 24/7 operations. But the big issue here is that they've changed the numbers a little bit. It's a $783 million hole that they have to fill. This is a loss of revenue. This is not spending necessarily, but this is a loss of revenue. And the intention right now, at least, is that the state's general fund reserve, which is our rainy day fund, basically, will cover about half of that. They don't want to use more than that because they need to save that money in case there's a recession. And the risk of recession is growing and has grown and doubled in the last year. The only thing that the governor drew a line in the sand about was education. He said, we won't tap education to cover the shortfall.
Okay, all right, Chris.
Yeah, they're also looking at a law that was passed that would go into effect in February regarding regulating AI. The intent of the legislation was to prevent discrimination by AI, but it puts the burden on small businesses to comply with regulation. I at first said, we need to take all regulation off AI. That's ridiculous. We need to not stifle innovation. But as I started thinking about it a little bit more and learning more about AI, there are some issues with it. I learned recently that AI, the more advanced forms, can show self-protective behavior if you tell it that you're going to shut it off. There are actually reports on this. It was a little unnerving for me to learn this. It will sabotage shutdown commands. It will copy to external servers, things like that. That's a little creepy. I think that needs some regulation, but maybe from the innovator manufacturer standpoint. I know that in job searches, I have friends that have been going through job searches. AI screens them out at times if they don't use the exact right terms. So I think the law needs to be modified. Taking regulation off AI completely, I don't think that's a good idea either.
With respect to the AI, I think that it's complicated because AI is coming to us in so many different directions, I think. And so, what was put out was for consumer protection. How do we, protect consumers and so forth. But I also think that probably instead they should have put a bill together to create a committee or something to really look at how we address AI here in Colorado. What I'm afraid of is we have this bill today, another one tomorrow, and we just then start addressing this AI situation through various different bills. I'd rather see a special committee put together to really look at AI and study AI and create a comprehensive plan for Colorado of how we approach AI here in this state and make it work for everyone.
Okay, great.
That's a smart way to go at this point. We ran a story this week that was so creepy, it's beyond belief, about a guy who created an AI girlfriend who then started bossing him around. So the first thing that should happen during this special session, create an AI budgeter. Love the guys who are working on it at the State House, but create the budgeter who's bound to come up with a lot of great suggestions that'll take up 3 days. They'll be able to concentrate on what to cut instead, and then definitely postpone the implementation of the bill, because the fast work they've done is what's often left us in these problems. You've got the laws of unintended consequences. One of the reasons we're short of money is partly because we don't have businesses and people coming here, and one of the reasons some businesses are saying they don't want to relocate is because of this draconian AI bill. So it's time to look it back over, and if we need the help of AI budgeteer to do it, let them do it.
Okay, all right. That was a creepy story.
Oh, oops. I had to shower afterwards.
That is just one of 4 topics we have discussed on the latest Colorado Inside Out. You can watch the full episode anytime on pbs12.org, on the PBS Passport app, or on our YouTube channel. And CIO is also a podcast and can be found on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And I'm already brainstorming with this week's insiders about what will make for great conversation on this Friday show. So tune in at 8 here on PBS 12.
Now we go inside the life and legacy of Margaret Molly Brown in our Viewfinder segment with PBS 12 photojournalist Rico Romero.
Molly Brown survived the Titanic and ran for Congress before women even had the right to vote. Rico sat down with her great-granddaughter and the head of the Molly Brown House Museum to mark what would have been her 158th birthday.
So we are at the Molly Brown House Museum, home to the woman who's most famous for having survived the sinking of the Titanic.
I am her great-granddaughter, one of 4. I just adore her. How could you not? Today is Margaret's 158th birthday.
So one of those tremendous milestones that we mark every year, just to honor this amazing woman who, along with a cadre of other amazing women, accomplished so many great things 100 years ago.
And every year we have a celebration here at the house.
So we have 2, not 1, but 2 great-granddaughters in the house today, Helen and Lynn. So it's an extra special day for us at the Molly Brown House.
This year, my sister and I are here. We were lucky enough to come and join the festivities.
They are just both living treasures, because as descendants of Margaret Brown, their stories are how we know what we know about Mrs. Brown. They enrich her story. They remind us that not only did she do things like run for Senate, help people in the aftermath of the disaster, but that she was a mother and she was a grandmother, and that she has this tremendous family lineage that still exists today.
She, first of all, was my great-grandmother. She was just an example to everybody of compassion, strength, resilience, determination.
She's originally from Hannibal, Missouri.
She left there to go to Leadville to be with her brother Dan. And that's where she met Jim Brown, who was a day miner at the time. He went down into the mines and did what everybody did. He asked her to go out about 3 times, to go out with him, and she refused him because she, there had to be somebody richer than this guy. About the 4th time, she said, all right, I'll do it. And he drove up in a carriage-like thing with 2 black horses and matching horses. And she came out and she looked at it and she said, this I can do.
So she married well. Mr. J.J. Brown was a miner in Leadville, and quietly through the early 1890s, they started finding tremendous amounts of gold.
When they became wealthy, they bought this house and moved here.
And so that gave them the privilege instantly to say, we're moving to Denver. So they purchased the house in 1894, and it was in her ownership until 1932 when she passed away. So the Molly Brown House Museum is her Denver home, where her and her husband raised 2 kids. They lived here for over 2 decades. So it's their beautiful Capitol Hill home that's been preserved to look like it did when they lived here at the turn of the last century. We've been a museum since 1971, when we threw open the doors and had a line around the block.
I volunteered here and I worked in the carriage shop and I did tours, and it was so much fun. I loved it. The story that I love is that when she was on Titanic.
It's spring of 1912. She had been traveling all over Europe and then Egypt. She gets a telegram from her son Larry and some correspondence with letters. Possibly her first grandbaby is not doing well, so she decides to come back to America a little earlier than she had planned. She books passage on this amazing brand new ship making its maiden voyage. It is the who's who of 1912. She boards in Cherbourg then, and of course, as we know, several nights later in the middle of the Atlantic, the ship hits the iceberg.
Women didn't want to get in the boats because they didn't want to leave their husbands. Everything they owned was on the boat.
She herself wanted to help as many people as possible.
So she was convincing them to get in. And she got to lifeboat number 6, and she started to do the same thing. And 2 crew members came up behind her, lifted her up, turned her, and dropped her 6 feet into lifeboat number 6. Later, she said she never would have left the ship.
Helen tells this great story about how, she wanted the families to stay together. And absolutely, she was seeing families torn apart in front of her eyes as the men and the younger or older boys were being told, no, you have to stay behind. And she and other survivors are picked up by the Carpathia, which is the rescue ship, in the wee hours of the morning. Rather than sort of just hiding out with the other first-class passengers, she said, you know what? We're all lucky to be here, but the 3rd class or steerage class passengers, the families that just lost their husbands, maybe their sons, we need to do something. So she went to work comforting people, using her language skills to translate. And within them getting to New York City, she'd raised over $10,000 in cash and pledges from her fellow passengers to help all of those in need, so that when they got to New York City, they weren't completely devastated. The Titanic really became this international platform for Mrs. Brown to really elevate the causes that she and other progressive era women reformers were working on.
She believed that if women wanted the same rights as men, they better darn well step up and act like it.
She turned that into a political campaign and a bid for U.S. Senate in the summer of 1914, which tied in beautifully to this whole notion that if we punish this party in power, the Democrats at the time, who did not support women's suffrage by taking away their Senate seats. We put pro-suffrage people in those seats, Mrs. Brown being a great candidate. Ultimately, Senator Thomas of Colorado decided to keep his Senate seat, and he was very pro-suffrage. So she suspended her bid, but was actively involved nationwide in politics, women's suffrage.
She was that kind of a woman. She would be amazed that people still remembered her and followed her life so closely.
Here in the West, we have, our strong independent streak. We like our heroes, and she's one of those great people that we can look to with pride here in Denver and in Colorado as someone who stood up and to do the right thing.
I just admire her so much.
So because of the family's sort of trust in honoring us with this story, we have these wonderful artifacts that give you a sense of Margaret's life. For over 55 years, we've been protecting this little bit of Denver and Colorado's history.
In elementary school, I remember learning about her as the unsinkable Molly Brown.
Something that stuck with you. All of these years later, you're still talking about it.
It did. She was so spirited.
Yeah, very cool. And thanks to Molly Brown's family and the Molly Brown House Museum, her legacy lives on in Denver's Capitol Hill.
For more information about visiting the Molly Brown Museum, you can go to mollybrown.org.
They are loud, raw, and impossible to ignore. We close tonight with a live performance from Gasoline Lollipops from the FOCO Music Festival in Fort Collins.
This Denver band blends Americana, punk, and folk into a sound that manages to be both gritty and poetic.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Studio 12. Follow us on social media and catch more stories on YouTube.
And we'll see you next Tuesday at 8 p.m. right here on PBS 12. I'm Bazi Kanani.
And I'm Ryan Harrer. Have a good night.
See you soon.
When you send me packing down that Green River Valley, I knew that if you couldn't, no one would have you. Lost myself drinking with those stray dogs in the alleys till the whiskey sold to my bones. Well, the dark came on cold, blowing off that muddy river. Felt so goddamn old, I didn't have the strength to shiver. Moon was swallowed whole when the sky slid back that sliver. I know I had to go it alone. Love is free, so take all you can. You just don't ask me to be the bigger man. Yeah, 'cause I'm all spent. Well, I gave all I had. Yeah, I guess living the good life, brother, baby, bad. Don't chase that girl, go on, get that money. Go on, break the world, I know you think it's full of honey. Maybe someday I'll look back and think it's funny how you always had to burn it down. Yeah, but right now in the ashes, choking on the smoke, well, I find it hard to grasp this great big cosmic joke. And I'm swimming through the tears and years of life and hope, and I know you ain't coming back around. But love is free, so take all you can. And I won't ask you to be the bigger man. Yeah, 'cause you're all spent. Well, you gave all you had. Yeah, I guess living the good life, bro. Ain't you bad? Oh, double below and got above. Oh, take all your monies from my blood. Yeah, show me
for you, Brad? What was your musical awakening?
For my awakening it wasn't like a particular moment or anything, but I mean, my first instrument was the oboe. I started that mainly because my brother, when it came time to pick electives in 6th grade, I was going to do another gym class, and he was like, you should do music. And so I did music, thinking I was going to do drums or something, but I was one of the only kids who could make a sound on a double reed. So I did that, learned to read, and I picked up electric bass. And that was like the first time I did something for myself. Because before I was just kind of curious about it, wanted to learn the elements. But then eventually found the upright, and I heard Edgar Meyer play Bach cello suites, and I was like, I want to do that. And that segued me into my love of classical music as well.
And you can do that. You can play Bach cello suites.
Really?
On the upright. I've heard you do it, Brad.
Movements, yes. Yeah, well, I sought out to do that, and then, started doing other stuff. But when I joined the Gas Pops much later, after I went to school for jazz and classical and stuff, I came here and was like going to school again after I met them in 2014, because I became exposed to all these American songwriters, like people he was just talking about. And I was opened up to this breadth of American music. I'd already been studying jazz and like amazing American music. There's this quote that Yo-Yo Ma said. He was like, early in his career, he was seeking a perfect performance, and he eventually attained it. Everything was exactly how he wanted, and he said he felt completely empty. Yeah, he was like, yeah, and from that moment on, he strove for an emotional performance, connecting with audience, really the reason why we do art. And I love striving, getting as close as we can, but that was one thing I love about our music, is that we just kind of, whatever happens on stage happens, and it's fine.
And that's an interesting point, is that like all the guys in the band went to music school, right? And so they've been practicing to metronomes and scales. No, I'm not passing judgment.
No, yeah,
I'm saying this is how it is, right? If you go to school, you got to study and you got to do things by the book. And that's how they all did it for a long time. And I was self-taught. So I was always trying to just on my own figure out what it takes in order to get better, right? And obviously taking a lot longer than it would if you went to school. So I'm going this way and they're going this way. And then at some point, when we all got together as a band, they started leaning more towards this philosophy, right? That Yo-Yo Ma was talking about it needs some humanity, it needs some rough edges, it needs some mistakes in order to be interesting, right? Like perfection's just not interesting. And they started leaning more into the heart of it, as I was leaning more into the technical end of it, and I think we settled in some pretty cool common ground.
When I was just a little boy, the devil came for me. Pressed my chest with a curse, he blessed with prophecy. Said I'd never hold a pot of gold, nary spend a dime, but I'd be rich as the devil in my mind. So I picked up some pen that I found laying in the thorns. When the moon rose at night, my shadow had two horns, but I was tearing through the pages, burning through the verse, and I knew that I'd be happy with my curse. And I traded wings for freedom to be down here singing in the dregs and demon choir. Come on! Choose a struggle to extract from my brain, I guess it'd be the one that's here now driving me insane. About hope and high glory, never lasting life, cause though it's short and dull it cuts like a knife. Well hell yes, I'm dissatisfied with all these muted hues. I'd prefer the world was burning, they gave me reds and blues, but I could build a rainbow with one black thorn tip pen, so I'll be working for the devil till the end. say you can't be down here by the fire. Thank you all.